the sort of anti-Trump generation can get something done?
Said, for it to work, it has to include Trump people. And I think probably the hopeful sign is that Al Hoffman Jr., a massive Republican donor, has said he will no longer donate to any Republican candidates who do not support controls on semi-automatic weapons. So that's where it will come from. Because already the American public has long been in favour of some sort of sensible gun control.
Yeah.
And so having the donors, it's basically the big donors have stopped it from happening. So if they enabled it, it will happen. I mean, that's what democracy looks like in America.
Trump's looking at that bump stock, banning bump stocks, isn't he, so that you can't adjust your gun to
and that was the old way of doing it. You make some sort of small concession that's not doesn't really matter, But I think if the big donors the big Republican donors, that will embarrass so many people and will make it far less viable in Congress.
The post-Parkland poll finds that Americans now back stricter gun laws 66-31. Highest level of support ever recorded by the Quinnipiac poll. And gun owners 50-44 also support tighter measures.
See, I think that's probably a more important stat. And, if they can be worried that if they don't concede some sort of gun control, because they were worried about Obama banning their guns outright for no reason at all. Yeah. So the fact that they might see as a concession as a necessary strategy is probably important too.
But are they prepared to get rid of their own guns?
Well, some of them are 150. The world's leading futurists, before we go, are in Australia for an international meeting. This is the Singularity U Summit, talking about drones, self-driving cars, hyperloops and so on, and how society will cope. Especially technologies that get better, says one of the keynote speakers, at a shockingly rapid pace. Drones, robotics, artificial intelligence. We asked listeners, and I'm not going to get time to say what everybody has said on the text. Do you think you could name one thing we will see that will surprise us in the next 20 years?
I go microchips in the skin for your HOP card, your credit card, your ID, so you just don't have to carry anything around with you.
Okay. So this is the Borg future. You meld with the machine.
Well, no, instead of just flashing your HOP card on the reader, you just flash the back of your hand.
Okay.
And some people are already doing that.
Cool.
So I guess that's...
some people are already doing that.
Yeah.
Uber CEO says he can see commercialisation of the flying taxi service within 5 to 10 years as an affordable method of mass transportation, something like that. What do you reckon? You got any thoughts?
Well, and so when I write about Pacific Futures, it really focuses on the big changes that affect us are not technological. They're human-driven and they're about our markets. So what's the biggest change? I think probably the bigger change for us will be, for instance, the change in our access to overseas goods. It was what drove the last thing. It was nothing technological. It was statute-based. And so I think probably the next one is around our housing. So we'll see innovation in housing, and it won't be about new materials and things. It might be about, for instance, prefabrication and scale. So I think the big changes that really affect people, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Facebook's a classic. Facebook wasn't cutting edge technology. It was old when it came out. It was just pieces of code that were familiar. So the big changes were already here.
Okay.
Future's already happened.
But your housing one, just quickly, will have to include materials. There's got to be some radical new material advance, doesn't there?
Well, the thing that will solve it is just more builders, more plumbers, more sparkies.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, more jobs. That's encouraging. Yeah. Damon Celeste, lovely to see you. Thank you for coming on the panel. Whawhatai and Alexia Russell, always a pleasure. Come back soon, both of you. That's us for another day. Thank you, everybody. Back tomorrow and Checkpoint on the way.
Kia ora everyone, RNZ News in about 45 seconds, and after that, Checkpoint for Wednesday the 21st of Feb. Tonight, cut off, and they might be for days. Thousands of people are stranded in Golden Bay after the only road between it and the outside world was severely damaged in last night's storm. We'll go there live. We're also in Taranaki, where water tankers have been deployed after the cyclone damaged water pipes there. Well, on the Kapiti coast, just north of Wellington, where commuters are facing lengthy delays after 100 metres of seawall simply collapsed. And what these weather events mean for small coastal communities very close to the sea. Think crisis. Also tonight, Stuff reveals plans to sell off or close 28 community papers and magazines.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Bat in Aho. The owner of Fresh Choice in Takaka says people trapped in the Golden Bay township are panic buying groceries. About 6,000 people are trapped in Golden Bay after the Cyclone Gita storm due to 3 slips on State Highway 60, the only road in or out. Logan Church is in Takaka.
This morning, queues of locals and trapped tourists poured into the town's only large supermarket, Fresh Choice, grabbing supplies. The store's owner, Roger Tate, says the supermarket currently has no milk, bread or toilet paper and dwindling supplies of canned goods and baby products. He says a staff member is working with Civil Defence to include groceries on a barge that is expected to arrive in the town tomorrow. He's urging people should not panic, as the supermarkets will hopefully be restocked soon with the essentials. Civil Defence is also warning people to conserve petrol. In Takaka, Logan Church.
The New Plymouth Mayor says it's unacceptable that one damaged pipe should knock out a quarter of the district's water network. A boil water notice has been issued for New Plymouth, Bell Block, Waitara, Tikorangi, Onearo and Urunui, which force schools and businesses to close early. Water tankers are also being deployed in 7 locations around the district to make sure residents have access to safe water. Neil Holdham says the network's failure drew attention to the fact that the country's infrastructure does not have high levels of duplication.
In this case, 25% of our population have been supplied by a single pipe, and we will deal with the repercussions of that in due course.
New Plymouth Mayor Neil Holdham. Meanwhile, 14,000 properties in Taranaki are also without power. 350 tonnes of rock has been dumped into the sea north of Wellington as contractors scramble to fix storm damage that is causing massive disruption on State Highway 1. A section of seawall on the Kapiti coast between Pukerua Bay and Paikakariki was washed away during last night's storm, reducing the road to 1 lane. Katie Scotcher reports.
Sea foam and driftwood is strewn across the highway, where up to 100 metres of footpath has fallen into the sea. The damaged section also includes the main fibre connection to the North Island, which has been exposed. The Transport Agency says around 14 truckloads of rock from Transmission Gully has been brought in to fix the wall. If conditions remain good, staff will work into the night, and the agency hopes to open both lanes by rush hour tomorrow morning. In the meantime, southbound traffic is being diverted to Paikakariki Hill Road, while those travelling north are still using the damaged section of highway, where a stop-go is in place. This is Katie Scotcher.
In other news, the way more than 2,000 state schools are governed and managed is under scrutiny. As part of a 3-year review, the government is looking at the entire education sector from preschool to polytechnic. The Education Minister, Chris Hipkins, says there's no plan to replace tomorrow's schools, but he wants to review it.
Tomorrow's schools is nearly 30 years old. It's time to actually have a look at whether it's fit for purpose. Boards of trustees are one of the features of tomorrow's schools that have had many benefits, but they're also brought a competitive element to the way schools are run as well that hasn't always been helpful to young people's learning. So we're looking at all of that.
Chris Hipkins says the government will not dictate change and wants to work with the education sector. The Mayor of the Clutha district says locals are devastated by news that the community paper is in line for closure. The media giant staff announced plans today to sell or close 28 of its community and rural newspapers and magazines. One of them is the Clutha Leader. The district's Mayor, Brian Cadogan, says it's a backward step.
Oh, we're devastated. You know, they've played a critical role in social and community cohesion for a lifetime. And it's almost inconceivable. Our thoughts are definitely with the staff and with their families, because that's a stressful time, but the flow-on effects to not have our community newspaper is quite devastating.
Brian Cadogan. Other newspapers affected by the decision include the Kaikoura Star, the Hastings Mail and rural publications like NZ Dairy Farmer. It's 4.5 minutes past 5. Sport, and the New Zealand snowboarder Carlos Garcia Knight has shot to the top of the leaderboard in qualifying for the big air competition at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. He was 5th after the first round with a score of 88.75, but awarded a stunning 97.5 in his second run to go to the top, with half of the field to complete their second and final run. The top 6 will advance to Saturday's final. In the men's ski cross competition, Jamie Preble has finished a disappointing 25th in the seeding run. Tonight, the men's team pursuit skating team of Peter Michael, Rion Kay and Shane Dobbin will contest the medal rounds. The New Zealand cricketers are hoping the Eden Park pitch for tonight's 2020 Tri-Series cricket final against Australia will be a little more bowler-friendly. When the two sides played on the same pitch last Friday, there were records galore, with Australia chasing down their 244-run target with ease. With conditions set to be near identical tonight, the captain Kane Williamson believes another run fest is on the cards. But if the runs do flow, Williamson says his players can't afford to be overwhelmed.
It's important going into it that we prepare for what potentially could be a high-scoring affair and work backwards from there. But it is a challenge. It is important we don't get too caught up in those sorts of mentalities, that we go into it with what we think's good and we just play what's in front of us and accept at times how the game may unfold, so it's not, I suppose, disheartening from a bowling perspective.
Kane Williamson, that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Dexter Guff continues his quest for extreme self-improvement. Nick Tipping brings us the best of Irving Berlin, and my guest, Belinda Thomas, talks about her love of fly fishing. What obsession, actually. Wading through barriers in a male-dominated sport and hopefully catching a few fish.
And on Lately at 10, we're live and we'll be keeping you up to date with the world, talking to some of the people who have made the news or are just worth talking to. That's Lately with Karen Hay on Nights with Brian Crump on RNZ National.
Met surface weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waitomo, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country. Cloudy periods, isolated showers becoming widespread for a time tomorrow, some heavy. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine today, showers spreading from the south tomorrow, some heavy, easing later. Taranaki to Wellington and Wairarapa, also Marlborough, Nelson, Buller and northern Westland. Showers, some heavy and possibly thundery, with southerly gales for a time from Kapiti to eastern Marlborough overnight. Showers easing and becoming isolated tomorrow morning with increasing fine spells. Southern Westland and Fiordland, showers retreating to southern Fiordland tonight and becoming fine elsewhere. Canterbury and Otago apart from Clutha. Rain easing to isolated coastal showers this evening, then clearing later tomorrow. Gales about Banks Peninsula gradually easing. Southland and Clutha, showers becoming confined to the coast later tomorrow, and the Chatham Islands fine today. Occasional showers tomorrow. It's 7.5 minutes past 5 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina. We begin tonight, of course, with Gita and its aftermath, and there's some big picture stuff here. It is becoming increasingly obvious that numerous small coastal communities in this country are at risk of being swallowed by the sea. More on that later. But first, Golden Bay, where thousands of people are stranded after the only road between it and the outside world was badly damaged by slips. Gita hit a very wide area, but it's the upper South Island where the damage is most obvious and most problematic. The Transport Agency says it's likely to be several days before State Highway 60 over the Takaka Hill is open to even a single lane. Several days. Civil Defence Minister Chris Whaafoy, Primary Industries Minister Damien O'Connor and Civil Defence Director Sarah Stewart-Black have flown in by helicopter to assess the damage, while the Defence Force is flying in welfare teams to help people who are absolutely stranded. Here's Tracy Neal.
The government visit was more than reconnaissance. It also served as a delivery trip for much-needed medical supplies picked up from the ambulance service in Nelson and delivered to clinics in Golden Bay. And food is also running out quickly. The owner-operator of Fresh Choice Takaka, Roger Tate, says he had people queuing from early this morning, panic buying essential items.
I got here about 8 and it was just crazy. People everywhere queuing up, panic buying basically. So.
And what were people panic buying?
Everything. Milk and bread obviously went first because obviously we didn't get fresh supplies and this morning there wasn't a lot there to start with, so that got cleaned out. Toilet paper, canned goods.
Authorities say food supplies will be transported by sea and are due to arrive tomorrow. Up to 1,000 tourists are said to be among those stranded in Golden Bay. Air services provided by 2 small airlines are stretched, and there's talk of boat and barge services to help get people out. David Rinink has an escape plan.
So now we're going to take the bus to Tautarunui, take the water taxi to Katiritiri, and take the bus to Nelson again. And my wife, she doesn't like boating so much. We managed to get her on a plane now.
Stranded German tourist Stephanie Pegos says they are making the most of their situation. She and her partner arrived in Golden Bay only yesterday.
Yesterday we were invited by our hosts to have a common dinner because, there were no energy and all the stuff. So we have also a lot of honeymooners here, which actually are quite happy that there couldn't be any better place to be stuck. It could be really worse.
The Transport Agency says there are 16 slips between the Rewaka Valley and the summit of Takaka Hill, with 2 sections of road completely washed away. Staff from the Transport Agency got a closer look at the road from a helicopter earlier today, and a full assessment of the repairs needed is now underway. Roger Ball of Civil Defence says even minimal road access is days away.
We're being told it's going to be several days to get even a single lane through. So that has some important implications. It means in the meantime we need to look at urgent options for resupplying food and other basic supplies to the Golden Bay area.
The New Zealand Defence Force is taking welfare teams to help civilians stranded in Golden Bay and several other communities in the South Island. Major General Tim Gall says police are being flown into Takaka, and the Defence Force will also be conducting an aerial survey of storm-hit areas. The state of emergency was lifted in the Bulla district early this afternoon. French tourists Max Rica and Fanny Dauchemont were touring the west coast and found themselves in the thick of the storm.
I've told her 2 days ago it's perfectly sunny, not a single cloud, and you're gonna enjoy. And
yesterday we were on the road, and there was like branches falling, and it was like passing. So it could be a bit frightening for moments, but it was okay.
The Bulla District Council's Chief Executive Andy Gowland Douglas says the Emergency Operations Centre will remain open but with minimal staffing. The focus now will be on recovery and welfare. The Red Cross Field Operations Manager in Granity, Melissa Davidson, says it'll be a number of days before people with flooded homes can return.
And clean-up's just starting, and that's often the longest. So we'll be involved for quite a while yet, and they'll rotate teams through to make sure that fatigue's not happening, etc., and that we're there for people.
The Ruby Bay Mapua areas of Nelson escaped damage from the expected storm surge, while rainfall in Canterbury did not happen as predicted. The Defence Force says resources are on standby to help in New Plymouth, while members of the 3rd Combat Service Support Battalion continue to monitor the situation on the West Coast and Canterbury. For Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
You would have heard Tracy mention Granity. We will be back on that coastline in Bulla later in the program, but our reporter Logan Church is in Takaka and joins us now live from the cut-off town via live view. Gosh, it looks like a beautiful evening there, Logan. Calm and blue and rather glorious, but what's the mood?
Yes, well, even just 24 hours ago, a lot of this town was evacuated. Hundreds of people were sent to the evacuation centre with fears that the Takaka River, would burst its banks and flood the town. Of course, now, 24 hours later, it is stifling. It is stifling hot right now. But of course, we're still in an emergency situation. The fear has changed from obviously flooding, in fact, to a serious shortage of supplies, in particular groceries. I was actually out and speaking with the Fresh Choice owner down the road. It's the only major supermarket here, John, and early this morning, even before the supermarket opened its doors at 8, there were queues of residents and tourists lined up, and when those doors opened, they raced inside. Now there's no bread, there's no milk, there's no toilet paper, they're running low on supplies of baby products, and it could still be some time until those supplies get through to this town.
Yes, it will be a long time, and we'll talk about the road in a moment. But Logan, we were talking to Chris Farfoy before, and he told us that they may be barging supplies in. Have you heard anything about that?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of hope in this town pinned on those barges. We know, as I mentioned before, I was speaking to the owner of Fresh Choice, and his staff have been coordinating with Civil Defence themselves about getting those groceries and those supplies into the area. Now, the owner of the store is saying that people should not be concerned that there won't be any food or supplies. It just won't probably be what you'd usually see on the supermarket shelves here. But it's also not just stuff you'd find in the supermarket. The Civil Defence are warning that people need to be conservative with their petrol consumption. So far today, it doesn't appear like anyone has run out here in terms of the stations. But even just looking around and talking to people are out with jerry cans, filling them up with petrol. And these barges are not coming right now. It could be at least another day or two before we see them, John.
So a couple of days before any rescue by sea. What about the main road? We hear from people who are up in the chopper that there are multiple slips and serious damage. Have you any idea when that road will reopen?
The short answer, John, is no. I myself flew over that road today, and the damage is astounding. You can see parts of the road just washed away or even disappeared under slips up there, and it's going to be a monster task to get that open. Now, the Transport Agency are hoping to get at least one lane open and operational in the next couple of days, but a time frame for that has not been finalised. And looking at the scope of work, and from even my own experience of flying over it, it's no wonder why no time frame can be set at this time. So really, as I mentioned before, all of these townspeople and the residents and the tourists who are trapped here are really hoping on putting their hopes on these barges. Although, to be fair, there has been a lot of activity in the airports and with commercial water taxis, so there is a way in and out for people, but the only thing is that these are not big planes. They are little 2-seater, 4-seater planes who are going in and out, and there's only obviously a limited amount of water taxis, so a bit of a coordination effort to get those who need to leave out. But as I said, all eyes are on the road now to see how soon the Transport Agency can get that up and running.
Logan Church, thank you, Logan. Talking about the Transport Agency, we're going to talk to them a bit later about the road out of Wellington. They will be busy at present. Water tankers are being deployed in New Plymouth, Taranaki, after Gita knocked out a water pipe which supplies 25% of the district's population. A boil water notice has also been issued for New Plymouth, Bell Block, Waitara, Tikorangi, Uranui, lots of regions, lots of communities forcing schools and businesses to close early. The state of emergency remains in place in New Plymouth itself. Our Taranaki reporter Robin Martin has more.
After riding out the storm overnight, the principal of Ogletown Primary, Jeremy Ogle, was happy to open the school this morning.
We made a call at 6 o'clock that we would be open. We checked the school, we had electricity, we had water at that stage, and so we made the decision to open the school. It's up to individual schools and boards of trustees to open the school, so we thought that that would be the best school.
That all changed shortly after midday.
So the council have put out a notification on their Facebook page, as well as ringing the schools. We just had a phone call from the council saying that the water is running low and that all drinking water has to be boiled, and so we had a lot of panicked and anxious parents, and so their best call for us to be proactive is to close the school immediately, which is what other schools are doing as well.
Mr Ogle says the school was able to look after the children safely until 3 o'clock if needed. Stay-at-home mum Sophie Walker was picking up her daughter Orion and a handful of other children for parents who couldn't get away from work.
I'm going to have 3 extras plus the 3 I already had.
Does that present any challenges for you?
Oh, luckily I've got a 7-seater car, so no, we'll be okay. It's going to be movies to this afternoon, so it's not too crazy.
Safe water was more of a concern.
I have a little bit in a filter jug in the fridge already, so hopefully that was full. I haven't checked yet. We'll have to be boiling for all these kids, I imagine. I'll do that as soon as I get home.
In downtown New Plymouth, the request for businesses such as cafes and hair salons to close had not got through. The owner of the cafe, Birdie, Julie Conaglan, was completely in the dark.
When was this morning?
Oh, about kind of midday, before midday.
Oh, okay. No, we haven't heard a thing at all.
So, yeah, what will you be looking into it now? What do you think?
Oh, of course, yes, I will, definitely. I'll go and have a word with the staff out the back and see what we can do and see how it affects us.
Senior stylist at the Cutting Edge Salon, Steph Maxwell, knew nothing either, but said if they had to conserve water, they may as well shut up shop.
We wouldn't be able to do our job, full stop. We use water to wash our hair, like our clients here. We wash the colours, we wash the dishes. We couldn't offer people coffees.
The New Plymouth Mayor Neil Holdham says reduced pressure in the water network had prompted the boil water notice.
Where it loses pressure, there's a possibility of contaminants entering the water network because it's designed to be full and under pressure, and what we've got is a network where pressure's dropping. So sediments sitting in the bottom of pipes that normally just sit there will move around, and then there's possibility contaminants can get into the network.
Mr Holdham says it is unacceptable that losing one pipe should have such a widespread effect.
In this case, 25% of our population have been supplied by a single pipe, and we will deal with the repercussions of that in due course.
Mr Holdham says the network's failure draws attention to the fact that across the country, infrastructure does not have high levels of duplication. It was a point not lost to most people in New Plymouth.
It certainly seems like quite a small incident to be affecting such a large area, doesn't it?
After what we got hammered with yesterday, we'll probably come out of it pretty well, really.
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it, because you've got, it wasn't a full-blown cyclone, was it?
If a tree falls on something and it's a water pipe, why isn't it buried? Why isn't it underground? How did that happen?
Not everybody was upset about the situation, however.
How are you guys feeling about having an early cut from school today?
Bloody great, I love it.
I get to get food, so like what's to complain about?
So what do you reckon, we should have a water crisis every day?
Yes, every day I am soaking, or at least like 3 times a week.
Water tankers are being deployed at 7 locations in New Plymouth, Waitara, Leperton and Bell Block, and repairs to the network are not due to be completed before tomorrow. Meanwhile, more than 14,000 Taranaki residents are also still without power. I Taranaki mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Robin Martin tēnei.
Let's head down the west coast from Taranaki towards Wellington. Commuters driving home up the Kapiti coast face lengthy delays tonight after the seawall partly collapsed during last night's storm. State Highway 1 between Pukirua Bay and Paikakariki was damaged, leaving just one lane open to traffic. It's estimated around 5,000 people use the road to travel to work in Wellington each day. Katie Scotcher went for a look.
This morning, sea foam and driftwood was strewn across the highway, where a section of up to 100 metres of road and footpath have fallen into the sea. Waiting in the queues of traffic, some took the opportunity to catch some sleep, while others gave up and turned around. But those waiting seemed resigned.
Well, we started off from Paraparam at 10:15, and it's now just after 11. Just sitting here watching the red light of the van in front.
We had Google up, but Google did not inform us of the traffic conditions.
I think we were prepared for it, really, because we knew that there would be slight delays and stuff. So, no, like I say, you know, we're using the car as an office today, so that's a good thing.
The small town of Paikakariki, which sits alongside the state highway, was deserted. Resident Sharon Bryant says incidents like the road closure have major effects on the town.
Two things happen when events like this take place. Either they route the traffic through Paikok and it gets really busy, or it just doesn't. It just turns into a ghost town, which it is right now.
Another resident, Jan Borland, says it demonstrates why Transmission Gully, due for completion in 2021, is urgently needed.
That's going to make a huge difference because it's going to cut out the coastal route, and that seems to be the main source of the problem.
Kapiti Coast Mayor Kay Gurunathan says the road is an economic lifeline to commuters.
State Highway 1 is an economic lifeline for us here. 4,700 commuters go to Wellington. This is excluding additional numbers that go to Pururua, and 2/3 of them would be using the state highway. So it has a huge impact.
Mr Gurunathan wants to encourage commuters to use train lines as a fallback, but says they also need upgrading.
You want to increase people to use public transport, but when the public transport, they spend millions upgrading it, but it looks like the signalling system and all that has not been upgraded enough. So there is concern about how quickly they can sort that out.
The Transport Agency says it's dumped 350 tonnes of rock from Transmission Gully into the sea today, as it works quickly to repair the damage. It says providing conditions don't deteriorate, work will continue into the night. For Checkpoint, call Katie Scotcher tēnei.
Well, joining us now is NZTA Senior Journey Manager Neil Walker. You there, Neil?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. What's the traffic in and, I guess most importantly, this time of day out of Wellington like right now?
Well, it's not too bad actually. We did a bit of planning around how we were going to manage the peak earlier on today. So what we've done is we've routed the traffic heading into the city over Paikokariki Hill, and that's allowed us to have the traffic that's heading up towards the Kapiti coast to flow a lot better. So from what we can see, it's not that much different from a normal peak period.
Wow, gosh, okay. So people are being very civilised about, because it's a windy old road over the hill, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And we only do it in special occasions like this. So we did take a while to think it through as to whether we wanted to do it or not. But we've had some pretty good help from the police to help us set it up. So and it looks like it's been worthwhile. It's sort of minimised the what could have been quite a bad night, people travelling up to the coast.
Yeah, heavier traffic like trucks, not so good on the Paikakariki Hill. What are they doing?
Yeah, so what we're doing with the trucks is we singled them out so they can't go over the hill, and we've parked them up, and then we'll wait until we get a sort of a reasonable number of trucks, and then we're sort of sending them through. So we'll stop the traffic and send them through. But and we're just grateful actually to the freight guys that they're playing their part to help us out today.
Okay, when will the road be repaired by? When will you be back to 2 functioning lanes there?
We're pretty confident we'll have it right for the morning. So our guys are going to be working on it all night. The only thing that might be an issue is there's a chance that we might get quite a bit of rain tonight. But if you go and talk to our contractors that are working at the moment, they're pretty sure that they're going to get it open.
Right. Which is impressive. Not easy conditions to work in, because that is everyone who knows that stretch of road knows how busy the sea can be against it. Should you have been caught out like this? This is State Highway 1. It connects Wellington with the Kapiti Coast. It connects the capital with the rest of the country. Should it have been so vulnerable to what wasn't an overwhelmingly bad storm in the Wellington region?
Yeah, look, we've had a lot. It's probably too early to say that, John, because we've had a lot of bad weather over the last 2 days. It's a huge amount of rainfall, and so I just find it difficult to respond to you on that one at the moment. You've got to remember too that we're building another road, which will
Transmission Gully. Yeah, and what is? Forgive me for, but boy, I think I first covered Transmission Gully when I was a junior reporter at RNZ in the early 90s. When is the opening date for Transmission Gully? When will the pressure be taken off the coastal route?
Around mid 2020. So we've got another few years to go yet, but that's the whole point of building that road, is that we've got a resilient link into Wellington.
Okay. Advice for people tomorrow morning to find out whether the road is reopened. You just go to your website or listen to RNZ, I guess.
Yeah, go to the website. So we'll be putting out travel advisories, and as I say, we're pretty confident we'll get it open. Saving it being a really, really bad night weather-wise, but I'm pretty sure we'll have it open tonight. We've actually got a lot of the rocks already in place. So, and there might be some ongoing small work that we have to do just to clean things up later on. But I think we'll be okay in the morning.
Well, that'll be good work if you get it done. Neil Walker, NZTA Senior Junior Manager, thank you very much indeed. What we are discussing there with Neil is happening in lots of parts of the country, and people are starting to put their hands up and say something has to be done. Now, this is particularly the case on State Highway 67 and State Highway 6. They go along the west coast, hundreds of kilometres of coastal road, effectively between Haast and Karamea, north of Westport. And the sea is eating the communities along that road, quite a few of the smaller communities. And so after the headlines and after Nona, we are going to discuss what can happen to save those communities. And if they can't be saved, what will be done for the people who live there. This is a big issue, not just on the west coast, but as we've seen places like Matata and the Bay of Plenty. These discussions are beginning to happen throughout New Zealand. We will have more on that coming up. It is 29 minutes past 5, unusually early for the Sting, but we've got lots before 6 o'clock. Coming up, New Zealand snowboarder Carlos Garcia Knight is the #1 qualifier for the big air final at Pyeongchang, the Winter Olympics on Saturday. We hope to have him with us live shortly. The future of our coastal communities. Staff reveals plans to sell or close 28 community papers and magazines, including the Kaikoura Star, the Hastings Mail and New Zealand Farmer. US President Donald Trump signs an order to ban bump stock devices, which make weapons fire faster, of course. And we'll go live to the site of the CTV building where a memorial garden is about to be blessed on the eve of the 7th anniversary of the Christchurch earthquake. Nona next with business. We'd love your feedback. You can text us on 2101. You can email us checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And we are, of course, on Twitter and Facebook. But Katrina Batten is poised with the 5:30 headlines, dangerously close to 5:30 KB.
Really is. That's probably why I had to walk in behind you. Yeah. States of emergency continue in Taranaki and Nelson, Tasman, as the districts continue to deal with widespread disruption caused by Cyclone Gita storm. Several roads are closed, including the Takaka Hill Road, which has cut off thousands of people in Golden Bay. The Christchurch to Picton route via Kaikoura will also be closed for several days. And State Highway 1 north of Wellington is down to one lane, while the Transport Agency hurries to repair a damaged seawall. The Crown Range Road between Queenstown and Wanaka is likely to be closed until at least tomorrow because of rockfall danger after heavy rain. Traffic is being diverted through Cromwell. The New Plymouth Mayor says the country's infrastructure does not have enough backup. A tree downed during the storm damaged a pipe, causing major disruption to water supplies in the city and eastern townships. Neil Holdham says it's unacceptable that one pipe should knock out a quarter of the district's water network. The government is reviewing the way more than 2,000 state schools are governed and managed through Tomorrow's Schools. It's part of a 3-year work plan that includes reviews of the early childhood education and polytechnic sectors. The Education Minister, Chris Hipkins, says boards of trustees are positive aspects of Tomorrow's Schools, but the system is 30 years old and needs re-evaluating. The Mayor of Clutha District says locals are devastated to hear their community paper is in line to close. The media company staff today announced plans to sell or close 28 community and rural newspapers and magazines. The Clutha leader is one of the affected papers, and the Mayor, Brian Cadogan, says it's a backward step. He says the paper has played such a major role in the community life, it's almost inconceivable to imagine losing it. The government is confident the new Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal will make New Zealand wealthier. A report out today estimates the new agreement will add between $1.2 billion and $4 billion to the country's economy once it's fully in place. Those are the headlines. Now, I'll be back at 6.
Thank you very much, Katrina. We've got more on a couple of those stories coming up, the TPPA and the closure of these community newspapers and magazines, which is a very big thing for those communities. So we'll hear more about that before 6. But before any of it, Nona Peltier, are you wearing a new ring, Nona?
Oh,
yeah. It's very smart.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's talk business news. The market is calling it Super Wednesday. A number of big companies reporting their results. We've got the sublime and the ridiculous tonight. I think let's start with...
It's really something else.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy day.
Yeah, let's talk about what was a standout result, really, A2 Milk, right?
A2 Milk, I mean, my goodness. That company's share price finished up more than 26% today. Like a whole gain of 26% in one day. Yeah, they rose to $11.75.
Holy moly.
I know, that is enormous, really, if you think about it. And that's just on a financial result. And it really, the result itself wasn't a huge surprise because the company has been signaling that it's doing very well. However,
give us the figures.
Their profit more than doubled in the 6 months to December to $98.5 million, and that's from $39.4 million the year before. So that's a big, hefty rise.
Hell yes.
Now, its revenue was also up 70%. And they're up for a very large increase. And of course, a lot of people don't know what A2 Milk is, but it's a specialty milk supplier, basically. So the producer has been Synlait Milk. Synlait is a specialty milk producer. And A2 Milk has been clever in marketing that around different places, but not here in New Zealand. They don't sell their fresh milk here. But that's about to change because they have found a supplier for their fresh milk, and it's not Synlait. It's Fonterra.
Right.
Oh, that really sent a shockwave through the market.
Absolutely fascinating, because don't they compete with Fonterra?
Yes. So Synlay's share price, of course, reacted by falling, well, I guess nearly 6%. But it was worse than that earlier on. I think things have steadied a bit because Synlay came out with a statement later this afternoon saying, oh, no, it's business as usual, folks. Nothing to see here. Yeah.
Gosh, A2, they are...
yes.
Yeah, they are a driven little...
They tell you what.
A particular and singular company.
They're very, very good at marketing their product. And so they've got a great supply chain now, and they're going to be able to supply fresh A2 milk into the New Zealand market, which had not been able to do in the past.
And they found a niche
in
milk.
Yeah, well, look, the thing is, it's not really, I mean, it's a niche. They're very good at marketing what is a cow that produces a type of milk, A2 milk, that people who aren't allergic to that type of milk can drink. So it's very popular. Never mind.
Right, so A2 having a great day.
Yes. Fletcher Building.
Yeah, Fletcher Building. We've gone from the cows to a pig, really, haven't we?
You said it. I don't know. I don't want to say. But yeah, Fletcher Building, well, as no one should be surprised, their market result was a lot less than everyone might have been hoping for if they were dreaming. They had a big first half loss. That's a net loss, okay, to the 6 months ended December of $273 million. Now, that's not really surprising considering the losses they announced.
We've been told that added
and
to
last year they made a profit of $176 million, so it's a big drop. Never mind, though, the company for now, the company is not saying very much more about what can it say, really.
What can they say?
Except that in June, they're going to give us an update on what their plans are. And when I spoke with the chief executive, that's Ross Taylor, I guess it was last week. It just seems like yesterday. He was saying that he was he had a very optimistic outlook about what kinds of things the company could do to turn around its fortunes.
And this is what they were stressing last week.
Yeah.
The bad news is past tense, right? They are absolutely thumping the table about
that might be so, but the market wasn't convinced because their share price fell another 7% today to $6.39. There you go.
Will the rest of the market do? No.
Well, our TIP 50 index, it rose up 1.3%. And of course, that's reflecting that A2 milk. That's 102 points to 8,200. Nice round number. And the New Zealand dollar, 73.3 US cents, 93.3 Australian, and 52.4 pence.
Lona Peltier, thank you very much indeed. We're going to go back to Gita on the West Coast. But before that, we have a new mid-service meteorologist today, Angus Hines. Kia ora, Angus.
Kia ora. It has been some fairly busy weather, but we are now in a stretch of more settled and cooler weather as we head towards the weekend. Some morning showers for Auckland, then the winds turn southwest, and you can see with a high of 23 degrees. Temperatures are a little cooler, as they are elsewhere in the North Island. Rotorua looking like a high of around 21 degrees, similar for Taupo and New Plymouth. It's going to be some early morning rain into Wellington. There could be some heavy falls to start the day. Things will clear away and there'll be nice, dry, sunny weather in the afternoon. However, with a high of just 18 degrees, you can see the effect those southerly winds are having on the capital. Highs of around 20 to 22 degrees in Palmerston North and Napier. A little bit warmer with 26 in Gisborne. All the other lower North Island areas hitting around 20 degrees in that southerly flow. Christchurch will see some showers skirting the coast in the morning. That'll clear away and be nice and sunny and dry in the afternoon. Cloud returning in the evening. A slightly warmer day for Christchurch after a very chilly Wednesday, but highs still modest around 18 degrees. That's also the case for much of the rest of the South Island. Highs ranging from 18 in Dunedin up to around 20 degrees at the top of the South Island in Blenheim. Right, that's it from me today. Ka kite.
Thank you very much, Angus. Yes, quite cool highs in the south. Let's stay in the south. On the west coast of the South Island, Gita did less damage than many had feared, but in a series of communities right along the coast, strong winds, heavy swells and storm surges destroyed more coastline. And one of the men evacuated in the Bulla district last night told me he fears that within as little as 5 years, their home and those of their neighbours may be lost to the sea. The region's mayors say coastal erosion isn't just a local problem, it's a looming national crisis.
We were evacuated last night about 7 o'clock into Westport, and we've just got back about an hour ago.
Brent Dyberg is in a place called Hector. 30k north of Westport on State Highway 67. You can't get out without turning back. Beyond them to the north, Karamea, and then the end of the road. But what a road it is.
Spectacular coastline.
That's the district's mayor, Gary Howard. For him, this is one of the country's great stretches of state highway.
You've got the surf, to your left, you've got the palm trees, and then it just rises up to the mountains fairly quick.
The people who live there know what nature does. The Tasman Sea can be a brute. The rain can seem endless. The wind can be a bully. But
we choose to live amongst all this passionate nature, I'm looking up at the bush-covered hills and out to sea. What more do I want?
that's Lynn Stoddard. She was evacuated yesterday, but she didn't stay away for long.
This time round I wasn't scared, and I actually came home. We were evacuated and I sneakily came home, but you better not report that. I might get someone into trouble.
More from Lynn shortly, but I met her via phone at Brent's house, and Brent's not so certain they're going to be able to keep coming back.
It's paradise to us. We don't really want to leave, but we were just discussing before, we've probably given it another 3 to 5 years, and we may have to seriously consider moving.
Because the sea is just eating the ground from underneath you,
inundating our property. I stepped it out a couple of months ago. We were about 40 metres from the actual where the sea comes in. We're now up to about 35, 36 metres. So in the last storm on the 1st of February, we lost about 4 metres of coastline.
And all along that stretch of coast, the Tasman Sea is eating the land. And while coasters are tough, the sea simply isn't respectful of that.
28 residents that we took away from their properties late yesterday so that we weren't doing it in the hours of darkness. It really looks to be a continual problem. It's a one-way track. Those properties are going to continually be threatened, sandwiched between the sea and the state highway. What is the answer?
And that's the question. What is? And the bigger question, Mayor Gary Howard says, is who's in charge of finding the answer? Local councils with tiny ratepayer bases in places like Bulla, or central government in that very different world, also known as Wellington?
Some of those tough discussions are going to have to take place. How do we fund it, and where is that going to lie?
As sea levels rise, as climate extremes bring storms and sea surges, Hector and Granity and State Highway 67 will be joined by more and more New Zealand coastal communities.
We've had this house for about 22 years. We've lived here permanently for 11 years.
And so, if you have to go, and forgive such a blunt question, but what would you receive in compensation? Are you insured against the predations of the sea? Is the council talking to you? Is anyone having discussions with you about what happens next?
We have had meetings. Late last year we had several meetings for local people here, and they're still talking about it. No firm decisions have been made.
So Brent watches the sea get closer and wonders what rescue will come. Can the Tasman be kept out? Can their homes be moved back? Will they be bought out and asked to move for good? And then a reminder that these aren't just houses, it's a community.
I'm retired now, and just excuse me, John, 2 seconds.
Funny, mate. I just wonder, you're all right?
Yeah, we're all right. Sorry, John.
Was that a neighbour coming to check up on you?
That was a neighbour coming to see if we're all right.
That's brilliant. That's what you get in communities like that, right?
Oh, it's a great little community here, yeah.
Can I talk to the neighbour? What's the neighbour's first name?
Lynn. Lynn? Can you come down here a minute? Would you like to talk to John Campbell? He wants to talk to you.
Hello.
Lynn Stoddard, who sees no sign of meaningful assistance from the outside world when the flooding happens, which it's doing more often.
Who's there? The locals. The local volunteers, the policemen, Greg down the road, the fire brigade volunteers, the Red Cross volunteers. the med centre's just down the road. Everybody's there with bells on. Rescue? We look after ourselves in these wee communities still. We have to. That's right, yeah.
But how much can the locals do if the sea keeps coming?
Look at Jackson Bay.
Jackson Bay is more than 400 kilometres drive south of Hector and Westport on the same long, battered stretch of coast. And Bruce Smith, who's mayor of Westland, says the locals there will do what they can.
But there are only 4 people that live in Jackson Bay, and this latest event has taken a big hunk of beachfront out of it.
And if you think that makes Jackson Bay too small to survive, Bruce Smith says, think again. What makes the coast tick? What attracts the visitors who make tourism the entire region's second largest employer is the small communities.
There's a big picture thing here. If we want the tourists to come here, they've got to have something, there's got to be something special. There's got to be a point of difference. And the coast has got significant points of difference, but all of them are about people living in little communities. They are the communities that are going to disappear.
That's the Mayor of Westland, Bruce Smith, and the Mayor of Bullis strongly agree. Civil Defence Minister Chris Whaafoe has spent the afternoon in a chopper inspecting damage, even dropping medical supplies to Takaka, which is completely cut off from the outside world by land, as we reported earlier. He then went to Westport, where he told me he's heard from the mayors. He and his office are talking to the mayors. There is a problem, yes, but the solution?
The short answer to that is we don't know yet, but it's certainly a conversation that needs to happen. By chance, earlier in the weekend, the previous week, we've been talking to local government mayors from right around the country, because this is not an issue just isolated to the West Coast, who seems to have been hammered twice in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But that issue of more extreme weather, coastal inundation, and the long-term sustainability of some of those communities is something that we're open to having a discussion with local government, who I think have been scratching their heads for some time about how we deal with it. It's going to be a crunchy discussion, but I think it's one that needs to be had because, as you say, the sustainability of some of these communities long term is a big question mark at the moment, and that discussion needs to be had.
Chris Whaafoe, and we're going to keep an eye on that discussion, obviously. The government is trumpeting the economic gains from the new Trans-Pacific Partnership, estimating it could add between $1.2 billion to $4 billion to the economy once it's fully implemented. The Trade Minister, David Parker, released the text of the controversial deal in a government-commissioned report into the effects on the economy. And Mr Parker is confident the agreement will make the country even wealthier than has been estimated. Our economics correspondent Patrick O'Mara has more.
The National Interest Analysis reckons the economy will grow between 0.3 and 1% more than it did if the TPP did not exist. While the gains are less impressive than the previous TPP, that did include the world's biggest economy, the United States, which under President Donald Trump has since pulled out. The Trade Minister David Parker talked up the TPP trade benefits, pointing out the free trade agreement with China greatly exceeded initial forecasts.
I have no doubt that when you have a trade agreement with Japan, the third largest economy in the world, and Canada, just about there, and Mexico, a large economy, there are significant economic benefits for our country.
The beef industry will be one of the biggest beneficiaries, especially in Japan. Tariffs will fall from 38.5% to 9% over 16 years. Beef and Lamb's General Manager of Policy and Advocacy, David Harrison, says the deal will also immediately remove the advantage currently enjoyed by beef producers in Australia, which already has a free trade agreement with Japan.
We employ 80,000 people and we export 95% or 90% of what we produce. So having those opportunities to be able to export and having those opportunities to be able to export to high-value markets is hugely important to our sector, to jobs and to rural New Zealand as well.
David Parker warned that if New Zealand doesn't sign up, the economy could shrink.
If we don't have this agreement, then the likes of beef exports into Japan would further suffer. The effects of that on the New Zealand economy spread from the freezing work floor through to the owners of the processing companies and the owners of the farms.
Mr Parker insists the deal is a vast improvement on the previous agreement and protects the government's right to legislate in the national interest. But Labour's support partner, the Greens, will not back the deal. Its co-leader James Shaw says while the government has reduced the ability of foreign firms to sue the government under the Investors' State Dispute Settlement, he wants it removed.
There is the continued existence of the investor-state dispute settlement mechanisms for some countries, and that allows large multinational companies to what we call jurisdiction shop and simply locate where they still have that possibility.
Opponents are also unimpressed, arguing the economic gains are modest and the potential benefits are exaggerated. Auckland law professor and TPP critic Jane Kelsey says the new TPP is not an improvement on the old one, and New Zealand's sovereignty is still at risk.
In the new national interest analysis, there is absolutely nothing to justify the arguments that they've made that this is fundamentally different from the original deal.
The deal will be signed in Chile early next month, though it doesn't enter into force until it's ratified by at least half of the 11 nations. The agreement will go through a select committee where the public will get to have their say, but that's unlikely to matter much. Labour needs Nationals' votes to pass the legislation, and while the centre-right party has yet to confirm it will back the deal, it's almost certain to do so. For Checkpoint, Patrick O'Mara.
One of the country's biggest media companies, Stuff, has unveiled plans to sell or close 28 of its community papers and magazines, among them newspapers like the Kaikoura Star, the Hastings Mail and NZ Farmer, and many more. Our reporter Sarah Robson files on this story.
Brian Cadogan is the mayor of the Clutha district. He's reeling from today's news that Balclutha's local paper, the Clutha Leader, is facing closure.
Oh, we're devastated. They've played a critical role in social and community cohesion for a lifetime. It's almost inconceivable. Our thoughts are definitely with the staff and with their families, because that's a stressful time, but the flow-on effects to not have our community newspaper is quite devastating.
Mr Cadogan says the Clutha Leader plays an important role in keeping the community up to date about what's going on.
How do people know what's happening in their communities? You have an event, you've got no way to promote it. It's a serious step backwards.
Today's announcement comes as Stuff continues to focus on its digital business, which its chief executive, Sinead Boucher, says is delivering increasing returns. But she insists the company isn't pulling out of those communities entirely.
We are still absolutely committed and remain committed to covering communities and subjects like rural news, for example, via Neighbourly and Stuff, which between them cover very local news and very national news.
Ms Boucher says they are hopeful that some of the community papers will find new owners.
We already had some expressions of interest for various titles before this announcement, and as a result of today's announcement there have been a few more.
The former chief executive of the Newspaper Publishers Association, Tim Pankhurst, says while today's decision is predictable, it is sad.
These publications play a really important part in the social fabric. I mean, this is where you find out why your street is being dug up, what your local councillor is saying, what community events are on, and so on.
Mr Pankhurst reckons it's time locals took back ownership of their local papers, as has happened with the Wairarapa Times Age.
One of the worst things to happen to, I think, New Zealand journalism, New Zealand print ownership, was for control to be vested in Fairfax, now Stuff in Sydney. They don't care about what happens in the New Zealand market.
Journalist Chris Dando spent more than a decade working for community newspapers. He says people want to know about what's going on in their neighbourhoods.
Some people just don't care about what's happening in Parliament or overseas or some of the big national issues. They like to know what's happening in their neighbourhood, 2 streets away, and what are some of the burning issues in their schools or on the sports ground.
About 60 jobs are affected by today's announcement, but Stuff hasn't yet confirmed just how many people will lose their jobs. Last week, Australian Associated Press announced that it's closing its New Zealand news agency, NZ Newswire, at the end of April. That decision means the loss of 14 jobs. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Sarah Robson, aho.
More financial pressure, this with the country's biggest DHBs who had a stark warning for MPs today. Their funding crisis may yet get worse. They say their money isn't keeping pace with a growing and ageing population, and services are now getting overwhelmed. Our health correspondent Karen Brown reports.
DHB funding and deficits took centre stage today at Parliament's Health Select Committee. Speaking by Skype from Auckland, where they were grounded because of Cyclone Gita, the DHBs talked about mounting pressure on hospital services year-round, unacceptably high stress on staff and a lack of adequate funding. The acting head of the county's Manukau DHB in South Auckland, Gloria Johnson, told MPs urgent surgical demand peaked last summer and has never dropped. She says in the past 18 months the DHB has been overwhelmed and it's hard to tolerate.
Given that we have people who are used to working really hard, used to going the extra mile, used to still being able to provide really high quality services, no matter how busy they are, but we face levels of demand that are so unprecedented and so extreme that we're actually no longer managing.
Dr Johnson says a growing population, high health needs and funding constraints were an explosive mix, and there have been long periods of time where the occupancy rate for acute beds has been running at 120%. Like other DHBs, Counties Manukau doesn't know yet what funding increase it may receive for the next financial year, which starts in July. Dr Johnson says it's hoping for a $50 million cash injection, but in the meantime, the $13 million deficit last year is expected to hit $20 million this year. Auckland DHB said 45,000 more people in the district, the equivalent of the population of Nelson, meant it too is struggling to cope with urgent demand, let alone other services. The DHB's Chief Financial Officer, Rosalie Percival, says it needs another $67 million in the next budget.
We are seeing unprecedented demand, particularly in acute services over the summer. I think in the last week we had our highest week ever, and we've also now stepped up our transplant work.
Dale Bramley, the CEO of Waitemata DHB in West Auckland, is also feeling the pressure.
We have reached new peaks of emergency attendances in summer that we would normally see in the winter. Most of our hospital beds are completely open at this time of the year, which is unprecedented.
The DHB's in the black, but Dr Bramley says they're running behind on a $30 million savings goal. Waikato DHB, meanwhile, is expecting a similar level of funding increase to last year, but the acting CE, Derek Wright, said a pay settlement for nurses and other groups could take a big chunk of that. Inequality, mental health and primary care are expected to be among the new government's priorities for DHBs. It's still not clear how much money the DHBs will get in the May budget to meet all the demands. That didn't stop the Auckland DHBs today from detailing the increasingly impossible job facing them. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Karen Brown tēnei.
It's 4 minutes to 6. The site of the CTV building where the largest number of people died in the Christchurch earthquake is about to be opened as a memorial garden. 115 people lost their lives in that building when it collapsed on February 22nd, 2011. 7 years ago tomorrow, the cleared site has been turned into a memorial garden which is intended to be a place for reflection, remembrance. The official blessing gets underway soon, and our reporter Rachel Graham is at the site and joining us now live. What's happening there this evening, Rachel?
Well, so what's been happening today is earlier there was a planting session by some of the families of the people that died in the CTV building. So it's basically a memorial garden that's been set up here. It's a large, there's a lawn area, and then there's also a more sort of formal planted garden area, both with a mix of native plants and international plants. Part of that is to represent the mix of people who unfortunately died in this building. There was 70 of those 115 were foreign students visiting Christchurch. And then also in the middle there is a grove of cherry trees, which at the moment are fairly small, but once they've really got a lot larger, they'll be a beautiful centre grove in there for people to visit. I have spoken to a couple of the family members who are here visiting the site. I spoke to Tim Elms, whose daughter died in the building. He said that he thought it was a beautiful, beautiful site. He was really pleased with what they've done. He said he also appreciated the fact that they've kept some what he described as stark reminders of what happened here. So they've got part of the foundation stone is still here, and there's also 3 of the CTV car park still with the branding on it, just so that even though it's going to be a beautiful sort of reflective spot, there will still be that reminder about what did actually happen here and why it's so important to people in Christchurch.
Hey, Rachel, what's the evening like? It sounds like there's a bit of wind gusting into your phone. Is it a nice evening?
No, it's not. It's been better. So today had improved and it was looking sunny, but right now the sky is closing in. It's very grey and there's quite rainy. So there's, it's going to, it's not a great conditions for the families here, but obviously a really important day for them, and to, I guess, important to come back and sort of reclaim this site. And I also spoke to Tim Elms. He was saying that he visits the site often in town, so it's nice to be able to actually have a space that they can come to and that they can enjoy.
Yeah. This is a big question, and the answer is not what most people wanted to hear, I suspect. But what has happened with the possible charges over the collapse? We've looked at this before, but do remind us.
Well, so at the end of last year, after a really lengthy investigation, the police said that there wouldn't be any charges against the two engineers who designed the building. The families, a number of the family members of those who died had really hoped that somebody would be held accountable for the building's collapse. But the police said there wasn't enough evidence. And part of the problem was the fact that there's a rule which says that you can't lay charges if it's longer than a year and a day since the death-causing act had been committed. And because of the length of time since they had designed the building, they wouldn't be laying charges. The families are still fighting that, and recently they met with the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. She did say that the law around that would be reviewed, but that is unlikely to help these families. But they've said they will keep fighting.
Rachel Graham joining us live from the site of that building collapse 7 years ago tomorrow. 115 lives lost in a single building. It's 6 o'clock. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. The Transport Agency is confident State Highway 1 north of Wellington will be back to 2 lanes in time for peak commuter traffic tomorrow morning. Kapiti Coast commuters faced lengthy delays today after the seawall between Pukerua Bay and Paikakariki partly collapsed during last night's storm. 350 tonnes of rock has already been brought in to reinforce the wall. NZTA's Neil Walker says crews will work through the night.
We're pretty confident we'll have it right for the morning, so our guys are going to be working on it all night. The only thing that might be an issue is there's a chance that we might get quite a bit of rain tonight. But if you go and talk to our contractors that are working at the moment, they're pretty sure that they're going to get it open.
Neil Walker says southbound traffic is being directed to Paikakariki Hill Road. The New Plymouth Mayor says it's unacceptable that one damaged pipe should disrupt water supply to 25% of the district's population. A boil water notice has been issued for New Plymouth, Bell Block, Waitara, Tikorangi, Oniaro and Urunui after a fallen tree destroyed a water main. Lack of pressure meant there was a risk of contamination, and water tankers are being deployed in 7 locations around the district. Neil Holdham says infrastructure across the country does not have high levels of duplication, a problem his council plans to tackle. Meanwhile, repairs to the water network will not be complete before tomorrow, and 14,000 properties in Taranaki are also still without power. A woman who fled her home when the storm hit last night says the area looks like a disaster zone and they have a long cleaning up job on their hands. Suzette Bonner lives on Anderson Road, a few minutes south of Riwaka town and just up from Motueka River in the Tasman district. She was told to leave last night after a creek burst its banks. Ms Bonner says once it became clear homes would be flooded, there was a frantic rush to get out.
Complete and utter panic, and nobody really knew what they were doing, and it's hard to get it together. But everybody's safe. There's just a really big clean-up to do. Everything around us is just sludge and 3 inches of mud. A lot of tar seal broken, a lot of roads broken. A lot of arterial roads are not operating and probably won't operate for a long time.
Suzette Bonner. The Crown Range Road between Queenstown and Wanaka is likely to be closed until at least tomorrow because of an extreme rockfall danger. The Queenstown Lakes District Council says its contractors closed the road from State Highway 6 near Arrowtown to just south of Wanaka Township this afternoon. Traffic is being diverted through Cromwell, but roadworks in the Kawaro Gorge is slowing travel there too. The council says the Crown Range is likely to be closed overnight so a full inspection can be done.
The government is confident the new Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement will make New Zealand wealthier. A report estimates the new TPP will add between $1.2 billion and $4 billion to New Zealand's economy once it's fully implemented, or up to 1% more than if TPP didn't exist. The Trade Minister, David Parker, says the estimates could be conservative, pointing out the free trade agreement with China greatly exceeded initial forecasts.
I have no doubt that when you have a trade agreement with Japan, the third largest economy in the world, and Canada, just about there, and Mexico, a large economy, there are significant economic benefits for our country.
Mr Parker warns that if New Zealand doesn't sign up, then the economy could shrink due to New Zealand firms becoming less competitive against its rivals in TPP countries. The agreement is due to be signed in Chile next month. A blessing ceremony is about to be held at the site of the CTV building in Christchurch, where 115 people died in the Christchurch earthquake 7 years ago tomorrow. In total, 185 people died in the earthquake on February the 22nd, 2011. The site of the CTV building has been turned into a memorial garden after consultation with the families of those who died. Today, family members of those who died took part in a planting ceremony at the site, and a formal blessing is due to take place at 6:30. 3 labelled CTV car parks and part of the building's original foundation have been retained at the site. It'll be open to the public from tonight. It's 6:04. Sport, and the New Zealand snowboarder Carlos Garcia Knight has posted a top qualifying score to advance to the final of the big air event at the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. He was 5th after the first round with a score of 88.75. He was then first away in the second run and was awarded a stunning 97.5 that was not bettered. Garcia Knight told Sky TV finishing top qualifier is surreal.
Dropped in switch, so backwards, did a switchback 1620, so that's 4.5 spins. It's quite unique because not many people do that. It's kind of the harder way of spinning, and it was one of the top amount of spins, so it's kind of got like a lot going on there. First run, I put my hands down and was a bit messy, and then second run, just cleaned it up and did it the best I could.
The Big Air final is on Saturday, and tonight the men's team pursuit skating team of Peter Michael, Rion Kay and Shane Dobbin will contest the semi-finals. They'll race against top qualifiers South Korea tonight, with the winner going into the gold medal race, while the loser will contest the bronze medal. The Australian cricketers are in a confident frame of mind, believing they have the edge over the Black Caps heading into tonight's Tri-Series T20 final at Eden Park. The Australians haven't lost a game in the series and chased down a record target in their last game at the same ground last Friday. The Black Caps are coming off 2 losses. The Australian spinner Ashton Agar says momentum is all important in T20 cricket, and they have that on their side. If they win, Australia will go to the top of the world rankings. That's the news.
Returning driver's licences.
Potentially people without the required licence have been able to drive heavy vehicles, big trucks and things on New Zealand roads.
Returning overpayments.
They wrongly trusted that the people who were calculating their salaries and putting that money into their bank account were getting it right, and they clearly weren't.
And returning to summer.
By lunchtime we'll be back to summer 2018 and get ready for the next event. So life's a bit of an adventure.
Returning Serve Morning Report with Susie Ferguson and Guy Espiner, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, natives or pine? Urgent calls for a detailed plan before planting 1 billion trees over 10 years. And after 10, fantasy master Ian Tregillis on the alchemy of science fiction. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Waitomo, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and the central high country. Cloudy periods, isolated showers becoming widespread for a time tomorrow, some heavy. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine today. Showers spreading from the south tomorrow, some heavy, easing later. Taranaki to Wellington and Wairarapa, also Marlborough, Nelson, Buller and northern Westland. Showers, some heavy and possibly thundery, with southerly gales for a time from Kapiti to eastern Marlborough overnight. Showers easing and becoming isolated tomorrow morning with increasing fine spells.
Southern Westland and Fiordland, showers retreating to southern Fiordland tonight and becoming fine elsewhere. Canterbury, Otago, apart from Clutha, rain easing to isolated coastal showers this evening, then clearing later tomorrow. Gales about Banks Peninsula gradually easing. Southland and Clutha, showers becoming confined to the coast later tomorrow, and for the Chatham Islands, fine today with occasional showers tomorrow. It's 8 minutes past 6 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Well, Katrina was just talking about the remarkable story of Carlos Garcia Knight, who has produced a massive score to be the top qualifier at the Big Air final at the Winter Olympics in South Korea. Of course, a 20-year-old who narrowly missed out on a medal in the men's slopestyle finals was fifth after the first round with a score of 88.75, which is pretty good, but was awarded a stunning, as Katrina said, I'm using the same word, but it is stunning, 97.5 is stunning, in his second run to qualify top ahead of Saturday's final. Top qualifying. I think, Carlos, are you on the phone now? Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing?
Yeah, well, not as good as you. 97.5. Can you describe... So how many times did you go round like the water in a plug hole, for want of a better and more poetic description? How many times did you go round?
Yeah, so I did a switchback 16-20, which sounds like a bunch of gibberish, but it means I dropped in my unnatural foot forward, so kind of going backwards, and then did 4.5 spins. So 4.5, and then it's kind of funny because I did it quite flat this time, which means like I didn't flip it much, but other times I'll kind of incorporate like 3 flips in it as well. So it's just kind of yeah. I was pretty happy to do it though.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And when you saw the marks, the judges' marks come up with that 97.5, what did that feel like? Because it must be a dream to get that high at the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, my first run, I did the exact same trick, and I kind of just put put 2 of my hands down, and like usually that kind of it means it's a bit more sloppy and a bit not as well executed. And yeah, the second run I cleaned it up, and it was such a high level for. It was the most amazing most amazing big air qualification ever. So,
in what can you explain why? In what respect?
Like
just in terms of
I cleaned it up and. What's that, sorry?
Oh, in what way is it the most amazing qualifying ever? Is it just in terms of the marks of everyone who's gone into the scores of everyone who's gone into the final?
Yeah, so basically, usually the standard to get into the final is a lot lower. It's a lot easier to make. And this time, being the Olympics, everyone has been kind of going all out, and everyone's been working so hard. And like to come here and to beat, everyone that's put down their best runs is like unreal for me. And I've been working kind of a hard way around, because what stands out about that trick is that it's not as common as most other ones. You see quite a few of the same tricks happening in these qualifying events, and sometimes even in finals. And switchback side's kind of the harder way of spinning, and I guess I kind of did it the best I've ever done it. So
ever
to do that on the Olympic stage is pretty insane, and I'm just so happy that the judges saw it that way as well.
How old are you, Carlos? You're 20, right? So the last time we won a medal at the Olympics, New Zealand won a medal at the Olympics, you were still 6 years away from being born, I think.
Yeah, I've heard that a couple of times actually, and it's been a huge motivating factor coming into these games. Like with having no medal in such a long time and having such an amazing team around us at the moment is. I feel like I came so close in slopestyle, and I knew I had a little bit more to give, and so it's pretty. I'm so happy with how I did, but I mean, a medal would have been that much nicer, and so it really kind of, motivated me to do even better in this contest.
You know what is the most wonderful thing about listening to you is how relaxed you sound. So that's a glorious way to approach the final, right? How are you feeling?
Well, I guess when I dropped in for my second run today, I was relaxed. I had a really good competition in slopestyle. I did really well in my eyes, and then I came out here and I landed my first run in big air for qualifying, and I've never done that trick in competition before, and it's something I've been pushing really hard towards. And then I kind of looked at my coach Sean, and I was like, he told me, he's like, dude, you've done everything now. Just go out and have fun and enjoy it. Anything from now is kind of a bonus. So that's how we're looking at it. But I think, I guess, leading into the next couple of days, we have another day of training and then the finals. So I don't know. I think things might ramp up. I'm sure things will ramp up. Like it's going to be an opportunity no one would take for granted. So
no, that's the truth.
It's going to be crazy.
Carlos, just before you go, and we really want to wish you well, but did I hear you correctly? You'd never done that trick in competition before, and you pulled it off with a 97.5.
Yeah, I guess I kind of taken the hard way. Snowboarding. Usually, my trick selection especially, it's a lot harder to do, and so it's taken me a lot longer to kind of get it up to this level in competition. And we've timed it really well because I've had this trick for 7 months now, and I've done it a bunch of times, but it's just trying to find the right moment to do it and the right time. And I guess, it sounds funny, like I've never done it in a competition before, but it's all about timing with this sport, and it's always like, it's the creativity and the style of how you do things comes into play a lot. It's different to a lot of sports, so I think that's why I chose that trick, and that's why I chose the hard way around doing things. But I guess it paid off well in the end.
Ain't that the truth? Carlos Garcia-Knight, it's so nice to talk to you. And if I was approaching Olympics final sounding even as quarter as relaxed as you are, I'd be pretty chuffed. So congratulations on what you've achieved so far. And if it's not tempting fate to wish you good luck for the final. Carlos Garcia-Knight, who qualified #1 in the world. As Carlos said, it's a really high-performing, high-scoring final. In fact, there has never been a final in Olympics history where the field has gone in with such high scores. But he is currently #1. Let's go back to Gita. Golden Bay is cut off after the cyclone, or the ex-cyclone, caused massive slips on the only road into the area. Thousands of people are stranded there. The Transport Agency says it's likely to be several days before State Highway 60 over Takaka Hill is open to even a single lane. The state of emergency in Nelson and Tasman remains in place despite weather conditions having eased. Shortly we'll go live to our reporter Logan Church in Takaka, but first to Riwaka, just north of Motueka, which was hit by rising floodwaters that were all part of the special Gita package. Local Suzette Bonner spoke to our reporter Emile Donovan about what happened.
So it all happened very quickly. We had a big day of rain, heavy rain, and something further up the creek has burst and water started rising quite fast. And so we were advised to leave, and we did, and it was scary. It was very scary.
I can imagine. What was it kind of like? What was the atmosphere like?
So our place was actually, frantic. Complete and utter panic, and nobody really knew what they were doing, and even very sensible people, but everybody's safe. The community is all safe, and there's just a really big clean-up to do.
So whereabouts did you spend last night? You were in an evacuation centre?
We went to family, took the dog and left the cat, and had a sleepless night. And we did drive out. Some people later on that didn't choose to go at that time did get removed by tractors and boats and things like that. But we did get a vehicle out and had a very sleepless night, and then came home to our place being fairly perfect, really. But everything around us is just sludge and 3 inches of mud.
Wow.
And a lot of tar seal broken, a lot of roads broken. Still some. It's very rural here, so further up, people have quite horrendous driveways anyway on a good day, and now I guess they're just trying to clear their driveways so that they can get in and out.
How many sort of properties are there around you that have been flooded? I mean, is it most of them?
Most of them, yeah, a whole community.
That's Riwaka local Suzette Bonner talking to our reporter Emile Donovan. Well, let's go over the hill, although you can't. Our reporter Logan Church is in Takaka, which is cut off. He joins us now via live view from outside the Fresh Choice, Logan, which will offer neither freshness nor choice, I think, at the moment, right? There's been a total run on that place.
No, absolutely no. We've heard of scenes of chaos outside this store, this morning. And well, the store behind me isn't actually a small store. I mean, this is a large supermarket with that usually stocks a lot of food. And it's 8 o'clock when these doors opened this morning. It was swamped by the tourists and locals who are stuck here, eager to get their hands on supplies. Now heading towards the end of the day, there is no bread, there is no milk. The canned goods supplies are down to next to nothing. Toilet paper is out. Baby products and pet food have also taken a hammering, and the owner of the store doesn't know exactly when the next shipment will be coming in.
Yeah, Logan, so we talked about this before. The road is completely out and no one knows when it's going to be reopened. More than one serious slip. People talking about barges. Obviously, you can get in via water and you can fly in, but that's expensive and inefficient. The water option may take a day or two to organise, mightn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, as you mentioned, barges are being explored at the moment. Civil Defence are looking at bringing in a barge with supplies, especially groceries, into this area. We also understand that Fonterra are looking at bringing in a barge to get some of the milk product out of this area. This is a high dairy production area, so essentially there's a loss of milk products just sitting there. So these barge options really are the next best thing for these locals here while this road is still closed. And as we've talked about, John, there is no definite time frame for when that main road, that main access point into this area is going to reopen. There's no time frame on that yet.
Logan Church from Takaka. Thank you, Logan. Let's go to the west coast where the wind lifted roofs, toppled trees, brought some power down in places, and as we were talking about earlier in the program, caused more coastal erosion in some communities that really don't want any more of it. Our reporter Charlie Drever is in Barrytown and joins us now. Hi Charlie, who's beaming in with an incredibly clear picture via live view. The marvels of the modern world. I can see you so clearly, and I can see it's taken a bit of a battering behind you. What have residents been telling you?
So residents here in Barrytown have been telling me in particular, especially around the valley here, that they've been hit with some of the worst winds they've ever seen. In particular, I spoke to one resident who has been here for almost 50 years, and he said this is the worst winds he's ever seen. Him and his wife were too scared to sleep near the window, so they were sleeping on the floor last night. And they have an art studio that's had all the windows blown out of it. I've spoken to another resident who is using a car as a counterweight for their roof, which was lifting off the house. So residents have been through a lot here, but despite it all, they've been very smiley. They've been laughing today. So I guess that just shows the spirit of the West Coast here, even after an ex-tropical cyclone.
I'm watching the picture behind you, and there is a car that has stopped at a red light. So that's a single lane road behind you now. So are there slips along that coastline just in the back of shot? And what other sort of damage are you seeing?
Yeah, so one of the big things is the slips. A lot of these were actually created with Cyclone Gita, but what's happened, as you can see behind me, is that the most recent cyclone has eaten away at it even further. So basically the road there is just hollowed out, and residents have been expressing their concern around the future of the road behind me, and in particular this stretch of road was where a camper van with tourists toppled over. So it is quite a treacherous piece of road here, especially in the cyclone, and as you can see in the aftermath as well.
Charlie Drever live from Barrytown, and thank you so much, Charlie. Quite extraordinary that that picture was coming in so clearly. If you weren't watching, Charlie, once again what you can see very, very clearly is the coastal erosion all along the west coast. The sea really is causing trouble to those coastal communities and the road along there. Let's change the subject entirely. The lawyer for a euthanasia advocate accused of helping a woman kill herself took less than an hour today to present her defence, which included a statement from one witness. Susan Austin is before the High Court in Wellington, accused of assisting the suicide of Anne-Marie Treadwell in 2016. And importing the Class C controlled drug pentobarbital into New Zealand. But her lawyer, Dr. Donald Stevens QC, said she did not intend for that outcome to happen. Well, our court reporter Anne-Marie May is following the trial.
Anne-Marie Treadwell's death was not initially considered suspicious, but after a suicide note was found, a post-mortem revealed she had died from pentobarbital toxicity. Dr. Stevens said the Crown had to prove something his client did was done for the purpose of helping a suicide, but he said Susan Austin had not given Anne-Marie Treadwell the pentobarbital with that intention.
But with the intention that Mrs. Treadwell should have the comfort of knowing that she had control over her end-of-life issues, and would have that control because she had the means, if she chose to use them, of ending her life.
A statement from the defence expert witness, Professor Richard Glyn Owens, was read to the jury by the registrar Nathan Lewis. The psychologist said a person who felt they had choices at the end of their life was in greater control, which could markedly reduce their stress. He said there were also other psychological benefits when a person knew they had the means to end their life if they were suffering.
The prospect of a good death seems to confer psychological advantages, such as reduced anxiety, more attention to spiritual considerations, and focus on quality of life, all of which may have the effect of extending life.
The Crown and Defence will make their closing addresses tomorrow. In Wellington for Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
Well, we had some sport with Carlos Garcia Knight qualifying top for the finals at the Winter Olympics in the big air event. More imminently, T20 tonight. Another chapter is added to cricket's trans-Tasman rivalry tonight when New Zealand face Australia in the final of the T20 Tri-Series tournament at Eden Park in Auckland. Final is a somewhat generous description of this game because both England and New Zealand only won one game. Australia have gone through unbeaten. The game is a rematch of last Friday's clash at the same venue, where an eye-popping 488 runs was scored and the Aussies pulled off a world record chase to send Black Caps fans away both entertained and possibly disappointed. RNZ sports reporter Clay Wilson is at Eden Park and we've got him. Clay, are you there?
Good evening, John. Yes, I am. I'm outside one of the main gates at Eden Park where the punters are streaming in anticipation, I would say.
Yeah, what, big crowd expected?
Yeah, I think we had 33,000 for the game on Friday, so I would say pretty close to that, perhaps not as much because, of course, this is a weeknight game and not a weekend night game, but certainly a final and New Zealand versus Australia and a nice evening, so should be another big crowd.
Yeah, it pains me to say this out loud, but we've got to be honest about it. Australia are overwhelmingly the favourites, aren't they?
Yeah, unfortunately, they definitely are the favourites coming into this one. They've won all four of their games to get into this final, whereas New Zealand have only won one of their games and they got sneaked through on run rates. So Australia have been very, very dominant and certainly a T20 side on the rise with a number of players, of course, from the Big Bash League, the domestic T20 tournament. I know you were telling me about this earlier in the day. It's very noticeable how they produce almost a breeding ground for 2020 specialists, and they've got some very powerful batsmen, some very crafty bowlers. So no doubt Australia the short odds favourites for this one.
Yeah. It's a really interesting thing to watch, and I'd love your take on this, but there doesn't seem to be the usual degree of unpleasantness on the field that is often the case with an Australian team that does like a bit of sledging, and New Zealanders who rise to the occasion on that front. Has peace broken out between them?
In fact, that very word was used by Australian skipper David Warner, of all people, known as a very combative player on the field. But he called the relationship between New Zealand and Australia, the cricket teams, peaceful just yesterday in his press conference. Kane Williamson, of course, is known as a nice person anyway, but he echoed those sentiments. These players are playing together a lot around the world in 2020 leagues, and so much cricket being played that I think nowadays they do become a bit closer, and we perhaps won't see the likes of the Move Hughes days walking down the track and the verbals that we used to see perhaps in New Zealand-Australia clashes over the years.
Clay, just before you go, Black Caps coming off 2 losses. Are they going to change anything?
I don't think so. There's some talk about Mitchell Santner potentially injured and went for a few runs the other night against England, but I think we're going to see the same team. They want to play two spinners, Mitchell Santner and, of course, Ish Sodhi. I think we'll see the same team for New Zealand. They went pretty close against England and performed okay, so pretty much the same lineup, and, of course, T20 cricket is fickle, so they very well could turn things around from last Friday night, which was certainly an entertaining game.
It sure was. Clay Wilson, who was there at Eden Park, thank you very much indeed. Just before we go tonight, feathers are flying, in Britain as hundreds of KFC outlets remain closed after the fast food chain ran out of the one ingredient it can't do without. The chicken shortage is being blamed on a new delivery contractor, and unions have all said it's really a case of the company's chickens coming home to roost. However, many outlets are franchises in the UK, and that means those who work for KFC could be hardest hit. This report from the BBC.
For chicken lovers and fast food fans, it's another day of sadness. Hundreds of KFC stores closed across the country because of a shortage of Britain's most popular bird meat.
Absolutely unbelievable. How can you run out of chicken on a KFC?
Well, this KFC in the centre of Birmingham is open. It does have a limited menu. It serves chicken, popcorn only. The chain says almost 600 remain closed around the country, and it's not clear when they'll be back open. KFC says it's happened because it's changed distributors. It used to use Bidvest to transport its chicken, a South African-owned company, but it recently changed to DHL, and that's why it says they've been having some teething problems.
We saw this coming weeks ago. There were people last week that were earning money, working on a good product, providing good customer service. Today, you know, they're going to be struggling to put food on the table for their families next week. And then when you look at the people that are working in the 900 KFC stores, you know, they've all been sent home with no pay.
DHL has said due to operational reasons, a number of deliveries in recent days have been incomplete.
They've moved what looked like a relatively uncomplicated supply chain to a more complicated one, and they don't seem to have pressure tested it at all. For any organisation to have done that seems, well, bizarre at best.
Customers have taken to social media to complain. The chain says some of its staff will still be paid. However, 80% of its outlets are franchises, so it's likely they'll be making big losses. Fried chicken isn't everybody's favourite, but for those who love it, patience is wearing thin. KFC says more deliveries are being made each day. However, it expects disruption at some restaurants for the rest of the week.
80% of the outlets franchises. What do you do when you're a chicken shop and the parent doesn't provide you with chicken? Unbelievable cock-up. That is Checkpoint for tonight. Thank you everyone for being with us. We will be back tomorrow night at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. A barge will deliver food and essential supplies to Golden Bay tomorrow to people cut off after major road damage caused by the Cyclone Gita storm. A blessing ceremony is being held about now at the site of the CTV building where 115 people died in the Christchurch earthquake 7 years ago. The National Party says it's yet to decide if it will support the government's newly renegotiated TPP trade deal, and Chris Hipkins has announced a wide-ranging programme of work to promote a high-quality, cradle-to-grave public education system. Our next news and weather is at 7.
There's a welcome magazine back on the block with the reappearance of New Zealand musician. So this week I'll be checking out some of the local music that it's recommending to us.